All right, everyone, so back for another action-packed mix game here at the Venetian. So again, reminder, if I get dealt 4 cards, I'm playing PLO high. If I get dealt 5 cards, I'm playing PLO high-low, otherwise in this case known as Big O. So let's get into it. This is actually the second hand dealt. I look down at the ace 5-5-4-3 double suited in middle position. When it folds to me, I make it 15, and there are 6 callers. So we're going 7 ways to a flop. Flop comes down king 10-5 rainbow. Checks to me, I bet 45 this time. Folds to Jason, who lost the previous hand. He only has 185 left. He puts everything in the middle. Folds it back to me, and don't love it, but for that price, I go ahead and make the call. So we're going heads up to a run out. The turn brings a king of hearts, and somehow the video gets cut off. River brings a queen of clubs. My opponent turns over the ace king 9-7 for quads, and quads is good enough to take it down here. So nice hand, Jason. A couple hands later, I look down at king 5-3-3 rainbow in the big blind in a straddle pot. There are 5 limps. Obviously a pretty awful hand, but for $5 more, I make the call and the straddler checks. So we're going 7 ways to a flop. The flop comes out 7-3-2 rainbow. Jared, who's in the small blind, bets 35. I make it 175. Over to Jonathan on the button, who raises enough to put me all in. Jared gets out of the way, and with $10 behind, I of course make the call, and we're going heads up to a run out. The turn brings a 4 of diamonds, now giving us an open-ended straight draw to go along with our set. The river brings the queen of spades. So I announce set. Jonathan says me too, which obviously is not great. He ends up turning over the king 7-7-6. So he's going to take this one down, and we've been set over set twice in the first 4 hands. So not the start I wanted, but the day is young. A couple orbits after the previous hand, I look down at the king 10-9-3 single suited middle position. Another cool feature about our PLO mix game here at the Venetian is we have unlimited live straddles. So in this hand, I have the triple straddle of 40 on, and Chris, who's to my left, has the quadruple straddle on for 80. Folds over to Josh on the button, who makes it 200. Over to Jonathan, who makes the call. Jared then pots it, which would definitely cover me. So I think a little bit here. And obviously I can't get unstuck by folding. So I go ahead and put everything in the middle. Over to Josh, who calls it off. Jonathan does the same. So we're going 4 ways all in to a run out. The flop comes down 7-4-2 with 2 clubs. The turn brings the 6 of clubs. River brings in another 7 and the 7 of hearts. Jared and Josh are on the side. Josh ends up turning over the ace 5 for the second nut low. Jared ends up turning over the 7-6-5-4 deuce for the rivered full house, and they're going to chop up the entire pot here. About an orbit later, I look down at the ace 9-8-6 single suit in early position. Folds to me, I make it 15. Chris makes the call. Over to Josh, who makes it 40. I make the call, and so does Chris. So we're going 3 ways to a flop. The flop comes down 9-6 deuce with 2 clubs. I check. Over to Chris, who bets 105. Josh makes the call. Over to me. I'm not going to fold top 2 here. It is a pretty wet board, but I might as well get it in at this point and charge any potential draws the max. So that's what I do. Over to Chris, who makes the call, and so does Josh. So we're going 3 ways to a turn. The turn brings a 9 of diamonds. Chris checks, and Josh does the same. Over to a river, which brings the 10 of diamonds, and they both check through once again. I turn it over, and we're good. So maybe this can be the hand that turns around the session for us here. In orbit later, I look down at the ace king 4-3 double suited under the gun. I make it 20 and folds over to Jared in the big blind, who makes the call. So we're going heads up to a flop. The flop comes down king 5 deuce rainbow. Jared checks. I bet 35 and he makes the call. So still going heads up to a turn. The turn brings a 9 of hearts. This time Jared leads for 100. Obviously can't go anywhere, so I make the call and still going heads up to a river. The river brings in the backdoor flush with the jack of hearts. This time Jared sizes down to 25. And after a pretty amazing flop, we get one of the worst runouts possible and can't even call for 25. So Jared's going to take this one down. If you're in desperate need of a poker trip and you've been looking to come out to Vegas for the entire year, there's really no better time, in my opinion, than the beginning of December. You get a very similar vibe to the summer WSOP, but instead of being 110 degrees, it's on average like 55, 60 degrees. So really perfect weather. You have a lot of tournaments going on, the World Poker Tour, Venetian's Deep Stack Series. There's a lot of other stuff going on. Plus, Josh and I's next meetup game is going to be December 6th. That's from 2 to 10. And we're going to actually be in town for a couple weeks as well. So if you want to come out, hang out with us, get this mix going, splash around some tournaments, it's really a perfect time. So if you have any questions, feel free to message me and I'll be happy to answer them for you. And let's get back to the video. We go card dead for a bit. This hand is about an hour after the previous one, and now about 4 hours into the session. When I look down at the King Queen 6-4 single suit in the small blind, we go to flops of King Queen 3 rainbow and 9-5 deuce rainbow. I bet 20 and there are 6 callers, so we're going 7 ways to a couple turns. The turns bring a 5 of diamonds on top and King of hearts on the bottom. This time I bet 210. There are 3 callers. Over to Jared, who pots it, and he has everyone covered. I make the call for less. Over to Jonathan, who calls all in for less as well. So we're going 3 ways to a couple rivers. The rivers bring a queen of spades on the top and 9 of clubs on the bottom. Jared and Jonathan have a side pot. Jared ends up turning over the 9-7-6-4. So he hits trips on the bottom. Jonathan showed the queen 3 for the full house on the top. So they chop the side. I, of course, have the larger full house on the top. And Jared and I are going to split the main pot here. This hand we're playing 5, 5, 10, 20, 40, 80, 160. That's right, so the quintuple straddle of 160 is on. When it folds to me, I look down at the ace-ace 5-3 single suited. I pot it to 635. Jonathan has a little bit more than that. He puts everything in the middle. Josh has us all covered, and he decides to go with it. I, of course, make the call, and we're going 3 ways to a run out. The flop comes out King 6 deuce rainbow. The turn brings the 5 of hearts. River brings the 6 of clubs. Josh and I have a small side pot. He ends up turning over the 10-9-8-6. So he rivered trips to win that one. Jonathan then turns over the 7-4-3 deuce. So he has the straight, and he's going to win the massive main pot here. An orbit later, I look down at King, King, Jack 4 single suit in middle position. We go to flops of King 7-5 with 2 hearts and Queen 10-3 rainbow. The small blind leads for the full pot of 80. 1 caller over to me. I make it 400. The small blind called all in for less. Jared has everyone covered. He pots it. I, of course, make the call, and we're going 3 ways to a couple runouts. The turns bring a 3 of spades on the top, 6 of hearts on the bottom. Rivers bring a 6 of spades on the top and queen of spades on the bottom. So we actually improved to a flush on the top. Now have 2 pair on the bottom. Jared ends up turning over the queen jack 9 deuce. So he flopped a pair, straight draw, and a flush draw, and hits trips on the bottom. So him and I are going to chop this one up. A couple orbits after the previous hand, I look down at ace-ace 6-5 double suited on the button. We go to flops of 5-4 deuce with 2 clubs and queen 8 deuce rainbow. An early position player bets 30. Over to Jared, who makes it 150. I make the call and the other player folds. So we're going heads up to a couple turns. The turns bring a jack of hearts on the top and jack of clubs on the bottom. Jared has me covered, and he bets enough to put me all in. And don't think I can fold enough flush draw on both boards here, so I call it off, and we're going heads up to a couple rivers. The rivers bring a 5 of hearts on the top and 4 of hearts on the bottom. I improve, but obviously don't hit my flush, so I turn over my hand. Jared then turns over his. He has the queen 7-6-4, so we were actually in pretty good shape to scoop, but he ends up making 2 pair on the bottom for the chop. In orbit later, I look down at the ace-ace king 10-7 double suited in the small blind and a double straddled pot. Folds over to Jared on the button, who makes it 80. I then pot it to 355. Over to Kevin, aka Frenchie, who shoves over the top. Jared has us both covered. He makes the call, and I, of course, call it off as well. So we're going 3 ways to a run out. The flop comes down king 9-8 with 2 diamonds. Turn brings the 5 of diamonds. River brings the 6 of clubs. Jared and Kevin have a small side pot. Kevin ends up turning over the ace-queen 8-5-3, so he has the second nut low and 2 pair. Jared has kings and 5s, so they end up chopping the side pot. I turn over my hand, obviously, for the nut straight, and myself and Kevin, aka Frenchie, are going to chop the main pot here. We go card dead for a while. This hand is almost 9 hours into the session when I look down at 9-8-6-6 double suited in the small blind in a straddled pot. Fold to an early position player who makes it 35. Both the cutoff and the button call, and I make the call as well. So we're going 4 ways to a flop. The flop comes down 6-3 deuce with 2 diamonds. I check to the original raiser who bets 50. Folds to me. I check raise to 150, which is enough to put him all in. He thinks a bit and makes the call. So we're going heads up to a run out. The turn brings a king of spades. River brings another king, this time the king of diamonds, bringing in the front door flush. I turn over my hand. My opponent turns over his. He has the ace-jack 8-3. So he hit the flush, but we rivered the boat, and we're going to take down a decent pot here. In orbit after the previous hand, I look down at the ace-ace queen 9-6, single suited on the button. There are 3 players who have stepped away from the table, so we're playing 5-handed. I actually have the triple straddle of 40 on. There are 3 callers over to me. I make it 210, and we get 2 callers, so we're going 3 ways to a flop. The flop comes down 7-5-4 with 2 spades. Checks over to Randy from Cleveland, who pots it. And with only a little bit more, I'm not really in a mood to fold enough flush draw with a straight draw. So I put everything in the middle, fold over to Randy, who makes the call. So we're going heads up to a run out. The turn brings a pretty good card for us in the 8 of diamonds, now giving us the nut straight to go along with our ace-6 low. River, though, brings a 4 diamonds, and Randy seems pretty happy about that one as he turns over the ace-king 8-4-3. So he had the second nut low, and River's the boat, and Randy's going to take this one down.
What's up, guys? Wayne back here with you. So today I was in for 1860, out for 0. If you haven't seen the previous episode, I'll go ahead and link it up here, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Take care.